All right, well, starting Daf Lam Gimel, we'll start third line down. So this is something that if you look in the Karbanas in the davening that we have in the morning, I'm sure everybody says every morning. So this is the order we have listed for the Tamid. The Farshim discussed that it's not, it's only Abaya Mesader. If you see here, it starts Abaya Mesader Ma'aracha. Right, that's the order of the Tamid, Mishmei de Gemara. The way they had it, Rashi says, the Kuli Yeshiva de Rabbanan de Midrasha. So the way they had learned it in the yeshiva there, Ma'aliba da Abashal. There was Aliba da Abashal, and we bring this down in our tefillah as the Avodah of the Tamid. Okay, it's brought down in the first we started to explain because it's the Rabbanan who argue. Now, what does this mean, Abashal and the Rabbanan? If you remember that there was machlekes when the Keteris is, and as a result, what is in between? So the what's in between the hatavas neiros. So part of the avodah of the tamid was to be mativ all zayin neiros of the menorah. However, as we'll see, that there was a din that you had to do a hafsaka in between. You have to stop in between. Okay, and if that stop had to be an avodah, so what was the avodah in between? According to Rabbanan, the keteris was right in between. We'll see. We're going to kind of go through this, but according to Abashal, he held that the dam hatamid, which Rashi explains as the zrika, and the dam, that the carbon tamid, the dam part of the tamid was what was mafsik. So we're going to be in this order. There's two orders, but right now we're going to go with Abashal's. Abai is bringing Abashal's order. Maracha gedayla kaidemes maracha shnia. So we start with Aliba Abashal. Maracha gedayla kaidemes maracha shnia shal keteris. The first part of the avodah is the maracha gedayla. So they would arrange the wood and get the fire ready for the maracha gedayla, the main pyre, Pyre, right? The main bonfire on top of the mizbeach. That came before the arranging the wood of the maracha shnia shel keteris. So first of all, Tosfos steps right here, and the first question that everybody's probably wondering is, what about Trumas Hadeshin? Right? What about Trumas Hadeshin? Why isn't that the first avodah? So he says that because, if you remember, when we discussed it back, there were times where we moved it back to in the middle to chatzos as early as chatzos in the Laila. Therefore, since it was done at night, therefore we leave it out of the order here because it's not always muchach that it's hilkach like a chashavla. Okay, so and there was a large hefsek in between. So therefore, we want to these were all like lined up, ready to go. One boom, 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 boom. Sometimes if you did Trumas Hadeshin all the way to chatzos, so you're talking about hours and hours of a break in between, and that's why we don't put it here. But anyway, so the order to start with is Maracha Gedayla Kedemes Maracha Shniel Shel Keteris. So first we start with the main bonfire on top of the Mizbeach, and that goes before the secondary one that was for Keteris. Now what does that mean? That the Keteris, the Avodas Keteris was, they would take Gechalim from the Mizbeach, they would take coals, okay, and then they would bring it inside to the Mizbeach HaPnimi, and that's where the Keteris was brought. So they take coals from there, they put the Keteris on the coals, okay, and then it was mocked here on the Mizbeach HaPnimi. So they wouldn't take the coals from the main fire on the Mizbeach. They would have a secondary, smaller fire. That was on the southwest corner. Rashi explains that it was on the southwest corner, except it was moved 4 amas towards the north. Okay, so that was where they would take the gechalim from. So first, the order was first we do main, we arrange the wood on the main fire, and then on the secondary fire. So that came before. Now we're going to go through the whys as we're going to discuss this. First, we're just basically going through the memory. I'm saying this is the order, and then we'll kind of break it down and go into each one. The secondary fire came before they brought the 2 blocks of wood. But the 2
blocks of wood wasn't used for the...
That was on the main fire.
So they make the big main fire, then they put the...
Main fire, small fire, back to the blocks of wood. So again, we'll explain the reason why everything, for everything, and what the order is. Okay? Then next came the Dishan Mizbeach HaPnimi, went inside and cleaned off the Mizbeach HaPnimi, Dishan Mizbeach HaPnimi, Kademes LaTavas Chamesh Neres. That was before they went in and did the Hatavas Chamesh Neres, which was to clean out the menorah. They lit the menorah at night, but this is in the morning. Was part of the morning tamid was to clean the first 5 neres. Tavas chamesh neres kadam l'dama tamid. That came before dama tamid. Again, that is Abashal's shita. This is going according to Abashal. That in between the 5 and the 2, the tavas 5 neres and tavas And then the last two, the first one and the last two, we brought the Dama Tamid, which Rashi here says is the Shchita and the Zrika. Okay, there are others that say that since the Shchita didn't have to be done by a Kayin, that this is just referring to the Zrika, not the Shchita, but Rashi learns it's both. The Dama Tamid comes before the last two Neres. So what's after the next two Neres? Then comes Keteris. Then you are makriv the Ivarim of the Tamid. The Ivarim lamincha. Then you bring the mincha. Umincha lachavitin. And then along with the mincha, but after it is the minchas chavitin, which is the mincha of the Kohen Gadol that got split in half. So that is a mincha, so it goes along with mincha. The chavitin and nesachim. After the mincha comes nesachim, and nesachim and musafin. After the nesachin, you have carbon musaf if it's a day that requires musaf, so let's say Shabbos. Musaf and the bazichin, again, if it's Shabbos, you have bazichin, that's the spoons for the lechem apanim, the bazichin levoina, the spoons that go on top. So again, that is saying that's when it would get done. Bazichin l'tamid shabein harabayim, that came before the tamid shabein harabayim. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, v'ikter aleh chelvei hashlamim, that you bring on it the chelvei hashlamim, referring to the doing makriv of the karbanos. On it, what does on it mean? Allah hashlim kol karbanos kulam on the tamid shel shachar. And what we're saying is that all karbanos have to be bookended in between the tamid shel shachar and the tamid shel bein harabayim, and that's what we learn from this pasuk. And what we're saying is there's nothing after the tamid shel bein harabayim. Okay, so now let's get into it. Let's get into the order. Amar Mar Maracha Gedela Katemes Maracha Shniel Shakateres. That the big main fire comes before the secondary one. Minalon. How do I know that? The Tanya, as the pasuk says, He ha'elah al moikeda al mizbeach kol alayla. So that is talking about when in the pasuk in Vayikra talks about the carbon tamid. So it says hi al moikeda al mizbeach kol alayla zumarach gedela. That comes first in the pasuk. The esham mizbeach tu kadbai. Right, we're referring to hi al moikeda al mizbeach. That's one fire, and then it says esham mizbeach tu kadbai. So we see the order. First comes the main fire, then comes the secondary one. Zumarach hashniya shel keteres. Okay, so why don't we say you do the Eshem Mizbeach first, the second, in other words, why don't you do the smaller second fire first? So he says, Mistabra Maracha Gedela Adifa. So again, I have two. I have the main fire that's in the middle, and then I have the fire that's closer to the southwest corner. Okay, that's for the Keteris. Why don't I do the smaller one first? Because we say, Mistabra Maracha Gedela Adifa Shekain Kaparasa Meruba. Okay, because the purpose of the main fire is for all the karbanos. So there's a lot of karbanos being brought there, as opposed to the second smaller one, which is just for keteris. So the Gemara says, Adarab, Maracha Shniya Adifa. Why? So I should say the second fire is better. Why? Shekain machnisin mimena lifnim. Because you know where that one is slated to go inside the kodesh. It's a more kodesh area, so that should be a better fire. So that should go first. So the Gemara says, Afilu hachi kaparas meruba adifa. Number one possible answer is still when you weigh it. Okay, we put it on the scale. We say, okay, this one has the kachalim that go inside, and this one has all the karbanas, so all the karbanas wins.
So quantity beats quality.
Yeah, or it's kaparasa meruba. I don't know if it's quantity of meat, but it's kaparasa meruba.
I'm saying quantity of kapara.
Quantity of kapara beats
versus quality of that one going in further.
Viva Yisema. Viva Yisema.
You have to let the recording know you're shaking your head.
I'm shaking. I'm not committing to that. Viva Yisema. Eloi Mishgach. Right. Shtika is not Haida here. Okay. Viva Yisema. Eloi Mishgach Eitzim L'maracha Shniya. And number two reason why the first one goes first is because the first one's the primary. Meaning, if the second one, for whatever reason, didn't have anything burning on it, so you would take Eloi Mishgach Eitzim L'maracha Shniya. Eloi Ma'al Mimaracha Gedayla. Okay, you would go ahead and take from the Maracha Gedela, the main one, and therefore it could also go Pnim. So it's got both. It could be used for Pnim, and it has all the Karbanos on it, and that's why the large fire goes first. Okay, so that takes care of the first one. Next, Maracha Shniya Shel Keteres, Kademes L'Sider Shnei Gzirei Eitzim. Okay, so then after the smaller fire, then you arrange on the mizbeach, on the main fire, the shnei gizrei eitzim minalon. Right, so this is going back onto the main fire. So we go arrange the main fire, arrange the secondary fire, and then put the shnei gizrei eitzim on the main fire. Minalon. Where do we know this? The chesed, as the pasuk says, uvier aleha hakayhein on it, on the main fire. Eitzim abayker abayker. Allah v'loi al chaverta. So what did it say? What we're asking here is, how do I know that the Shnei Gizer Eitzim come after the secondary fire? So why? Because it says Uviyar Allah on the main one, and what do we darshan from that? Allah v'loi al chaverta, which means Niklal de Isa l'chaverta. It means that there is already a second fire. So therefore I know that the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim must come after the secondary fire. And it goes on to the first one. It goes on to the main fire, but it must come after there already exists a secondary fire. The high Allah mibayle l'gufay, the Gemara says, I already need this Allah. How are you darshaning this Allah? I need you to tell me that you have to put it on the Eitzim, right? Via Allah. I needed to tell me. Well, why are you learning from here? So the Gemara says, Tre'ela ksiv, there's another Allah. Okay, so we know, right? So our order is main fire, secondary fire, Shnei Gezirei Eitzim. Siddur Shnei Gezirei Eitzim Kaidon l'Disham Mizbeach HaPnimi comes before the Disham Mizbeach HaPnimi. Afal Gav Dahacha Ksiv Babayker Babayker, even though by the Disham Mizbeach HaPnimi it says Babayker Babayker. Now, anytime it says Babayker Babayker, it means make it earlier. So it sounds like put it first. Okay, now we already said that you have to start with the fire, so that wasn't an option. So how do we know that the Siddur Shnei Gezirei Eitzim on the 2 blocks of wood on the main fire comes before something that says Babayker Babayker? That's what the Gemara wants to understand. Babayker, both of them, both the Gezirei Eitzim and the Disham Mizbeach HaPnimi say Afal Gab Dahacha Ksiv Babayker Babayker V'Achak Ksiv Babayker Babayker Afilo Hachi Machshir Adav. So how do I know they both say Babayker Babayker? So it means they both have to come first. So how do I know that the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim come before the Disham Mizbeach HaPnimi? So Gemara says that it's because wood is a machshir. It creates it's a preparation. It creates a fire, as opposed to taking off the Mizbeach HaPnimi. It's not a machshir for anything. So machshir adav machshir ma'nihu Shnei Gezirei Eitzim. I frek the Gemara. V'ha amret Shnei Gezirei Eitzim la'aracha gedayla azli, saying it's a machshir, but it's not a machshir for this, because right, you're trying to say, okay, you know how I know, right? What's the Disham Mizbeach HaPnimi is to remove the ashes to get it ready to be able to bring the Keteris. So now, what we're saying is that before I have to do the machshir first, which is the preparations to hainu, get the wood going for the fire for what I'm going to need for the fire for the Mizbeach HaPnimi, before I clean off the Mizbeach HaPnimi, the machshir comes first. So the Gemara asks, I don't understand. The machshir, the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim go onto the main fire. Where does the fire come from the Mizbeach HaPnimi? From the side fire, right? So why is it's not a machshir for that? So why would you go ahead and say that the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim come first? So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, number one, Shem Eitzim. So you could say that we're talking about wood. Wood is a machshir, and you're right that maybe this wood doesn't go for this fire, but it's still wood, and therefore it's still a machshir, and therefore it still comes before. That's one answer. Ravina Amar Hayel v'Hischel b'Maracha Goimer. Ravina says another answer. We're going to have 3 answers. Ravina says another answer. Since you already started with the Maracha, so finish. You already started preparing the fires. Finish preparing the fires. Rav Ashi Amar Eloi Mishkach Eitzim Maracha Shnia, like we answered before. Eloi Mishkach Eitzim Maracha Shnia Miloi Mayo Maracha Gedola. And therefore, since even though the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim go on the main fire, if you were, for whatever reason, not to have fire on the smaller one, you would take from the larger one. So it is, maybe not a direct, but at least an indirect machshirei. Okay? V'dishin Mizbeach HaPnimi, koidem lahatavas chamesh neres. And the dishin of the Mizbeach HaPnimi comes before the 5 neres, which is, right, we have to prepare the neres of the menorah. So the Disham Mizbeach HaPnimi comes before. My time, Amar Abaya, Gemara, Gemira, Svar Yadana. So Abaya says, I don't know, that's just the way we learned it. That's that's the way it was, that's our tradition. I say halacha Moshe Mizina, that's our tradition. However, Svar Yadana, I don't know the reason why. Rava argues, he says no, Reish Lakish. To Reish Lakish, to Amar Reish Lakish, Reish Lakish says, Ein ma'avirin al hamitzvos. So you want to know why the Disham Mizbeach HaPnimi comes before the Atavas Neres, is because this din of Ein ma'avirin al mitzvos, we won't pass over mitzvos. What does that mean? V'chi ayol lehechal, when you go into the Echel, remember we discussed the positioning back in both Pesachim and Shechalom. V'chiyaya lehechel b'mizbeach paga b'reisha. That first you're going to meet the Mizbeach Hazav. Why? Because if you remember, the Tanya, Shulchan B'tzafain, the Shulchan is in the north, Mashach men HaKaisel Shtei Amas. So the Shulchan, once you go into the Kodesh, is off of the north wall 2.5 amas, offset. And the menorah is in the south, 2.5 amas off the south wall. And Mizbeach Mimutza V'oimer Be'emtza, the Mizbeach is right in between the menorah and the Shulchan on the north and the menorah on the south. It'll be right in the middle. Umashach Klape Chutz Kima. And what we're saying is that it is a little bit offset between the two. And it's a little offset, and it's pushed actually out towards the opening of the Kodesh. So therefore, what we're saying is, on the way to do the menorah, now, just to be clear, both the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim says Babayker Babayker, the Dishin Mizbeach HaPnimi says Babayker Babayker, and the menorah says Babayker Babayker. So they all come first. So how do you decide the order? So we said Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, we understand. Now we're up to Dishin Mizbeach HaPnimi. Why does that come before the Hatavas menorah? That is because as you're walking into the Kodesh, you will run into the in order to get to menorah, you will have to pass by the Mizbeach Hazav. And Ein Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs says Rava. For the Gemara, why is it, right? It's a little weird. Wouldn't it? It would be much more linear to have them in an order. Why is it that we have the Mizbeach Mashach Kima, right, a little bit out towards the entrance? So he says, V'nukma lahadayu, why don't we put it in order? Kivin dechsiv, v'asham menorah, noichach ha-shulchan, that the menorah has to be opposite the shulchan, noichach, ba'in dechazi adadi, they have to be able to see each other. Okay, and therefore, we had to move the Mizbeach HaPnimi a little bit further, okay, out towards the entrance so that the menorah and the shulchan can see each other. Now, Amar Rava did an Amar Mitzvah Shma Mina Midrei Shlakish. We learn from Reish Lakish that Avure Dara Ataytefta Aser, that to pass over the tefillin for your arm is Aser. And the way Rashi explains the Machlokes Rishonim here, how to explain this Gemara, Rashi says, since when you go ahead and you put on your tefillin, right? You have your tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel reish. Your hand, you pass over your hand, so to speak, before you get to your hand before you get to your head, and therefore you have to go ahead and put on the tefillin shel yad first before you put on the shel reish. Hey chiyavid, what do you do? Midara. Hey chiyavid midara l'tatefta. So you have to, since you can't pass over the arm, put on your arm tefillin first, okay, and then put on your reish. Okay, the other Rishonim, Taisus learns this as that we're not talking about, he says, I'm sorry, that the pasuk says, we have a pasuk that says, so it's not because, it's straight up in a pasuk. So he says he's talking about putting it away in preparation for the next time. That when you go to put away the reish first and then the yad, so that your yad is available first. Okay, so that you can be Makayim the pasuk.
So the Ein Mavir is going on the Tefillin Zakum more than on the
Tefillin, exactly, to set up for Ein Mavir on Mishras. There are others who explain that more like what you're saying, that Ein Mavir is an explanation of the pasuk. But Teshuvah brings down another shita that says it's in regards to, there's a din they have to touch your tefillin. To feel them, right? You have to feel them. So you touch them and kiss them. That you should touch is talking about the order in which you should be mashmesh your tefillin, not necessarily in which you put it on.
What's this chamesh nearest? They lit 5 near, so
so there's 5 and 2. We'll see why in a second. But there's 7 neiros.
Sometimes they lit 5?
No. There's 7 neiros.
Yeah.
They did it. It was split into 2 avodas, and there was possibly an avodah in between. 5 neiros and 2 neiros. And that's what Abba Shol holds. What was in between the 5 and the 2 was the Dam HaTamid. The Rabbanan, right now we're quoting Abba Shol, but the Rabbanan, which we had earlier in the Masechta, was the Keteris comes in between the 5 and the 2.
We explained why it's
they split it into 2, yeah. V'atavas chamesh neiros kaidem l'dam HaTamid. V'dam HaTamid kaidem l'atavas shtei neiros. So now my timer, why are we going to go ahead and why are we going to go ahead and put? Why does the chamesh neiros go next, and then the dam tamid, and then the shtei neiros? Amar Abaya, hahu babayker the shnei gezirei eitzim, So if I take the Mabayker of the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, right? Why did we say that the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim comes before the Mizbeach HaPnimi? Because it was a machshir, right? So we don't need that Mabayker anymore. They all say Mabayker to tell me it's early, but once I have Mizbeach HaPnimi that says Mabayker, and my Shnei Gezirei are a machshir to that, so then I don't need the Mabayker of Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, so I could use it for something else. So I'll take those Shnei Gezirei, Shadinu Lahacha, Chad Shadil Atavas Chamesh Neiros. This is very interesting. So now, the Neiros themselves say Babakar already. Tamid, okay, what is the carbon Tamid, the Dam on Tamid? It says Akevas Achad Taseh Babakar. It has one Baker. So watch what we're going to do. We're going to take the two Babakers from the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, which I don't need anymore, because it's a machsher to the Dishin Mizbeach HaPnimi, which already said Babayker. So I'm going to take those two Babaykers. So I'm going to take one, one is going to put onto the first five, Dilikadmi Ladam HaTamid, V'chad Shadi Ladam HaTamid, Dinikadmi Ladam HaShtei Neiros. So now I'm going to end up with Kaviyachol, I'm going to add a Babayker to my 5 Neiros, I'm going to add a Babayker to my Tamid, which only had 1, now has 2. My menorah, my neiros, it says Babayker Behetivas and Neiros Yaktirena, so it has already 2 Babayker, so I'm going to give it a 3 Babayker. Now it's a 3 Babayker, and then it comes first before the Damar Tamid. Chad Shadil Atavas Chamesh Neiros Dilikad Damar Tamid. The Hachat Plasa. Now I've got 3. The 2 Babaykers of my normal menorah plus 1 of the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim. The Hachat Trei. The Chad Shadil Damar Tamid Dinikad Atavas Shtei Neiros. And put 1 onto the Dama Tamid to tell me that it comes before the last 2. Afagav dahacha trei mechaper adif. Okay, now we're going to say that even though they are both 2, right? So what do? We just modified it. We had again neiros, both 5 and 2 say Babayker, because we just split that into 2. But for all neiros, it's said Babayker. So we take the 2 Babaykers from the Shnei Gezirei, and we say that you put 1 on the Kaviyachal on the first 5 neiros. Now it has 3 Babaykers. So that means it comes first. Then you add the other 1 to the Dama Tamid to tell you that now I have Dama Tamid and my last 2 neiros, which both have 2 Babaykers. My last 2 neiros have 2 Babaykers naturally, and my Tamid has 2 Babaykers because it has 1 naturally, 1 in the pasuk and 1 from Shnei Gezirei. And since the Dama Tamid, Dahainu, the Shechita and the Zrika, at least according to the Rashi, learned that of the Tamid, has now 2 Babaykers, since Dama Tamid has the extra strength of being a kapara, we'll bring it in, we'll drop it in between the 3 Babayker Hatavas Neiros and the 2 Babayker Hatavas Neiros, and we'll put the Dama Tamid right in between there. Amar le Papa Labaya. This is once you're playing around with the Babaykers of once you're playing around with the Babaykers of Shnei Gezirei Eitzim ve'ema chad shadol adishon mizbeach hapnimi dinekadel adam hatamid. So why don't you take 1, put it on the mizbeach hapnimi to tell me that it should come before dam hatamid? The hachat tlasa v'hachat trei v'chad shadol adam hatamid. So why don't I split it? 1 go to mizbeach hapnimi. Now we don't really need it on mizbeach hapnimi. We already said that was gonna go earlier. The point is, put 1 there, so now it's 3. That comes first. Use the other 1 for Dama Tamid, now it's 2, and tell me that my Dama Tamid should come before my Hatavas Neiros.
Hatavas Neiros the 5 or 2?
The Nikadal Hatavas Chamesh Neiros, the 5, even the 5. It definitely comes before the 2 according to Abishal. The Afagav, the Hacha Trei, Mechaper Adif.
So it should go before any.
So what we're saying is, do your Dama Tamid, once we're splitting this up, have your Dama Tamid come before all of your Neiros. So the Gemara says, in Kain Afsukim, if so, what are you going to use to separate between the Chamesh Neiros and the 5 Neiros? Now, why do you need to? Why do you need to split? So here you're going to see why you split it. Reish Lakish says the reason you split it is that in order to lend extra chashivos to it, to make lahargish, right, to make pomp, it's a ceremony. So to make it into a ceremony, we got to pause in the middle, we got to stop, right? So, and I understand that if that's the point, all you need is a pause. So then this eitzah would be a good eitzah. because you don't actually need an avodah between the 5 and the 2. All you need is to stop. So let's say that one of the babaykers goes to the damatamid, and not the neiris. Now the damatamid has 2 babaykers, the neiris have 2 babaykers. Damatamid wins out because it's a machaper, it goes before, and you need to have a separation, no problem. We'll stop, everybody will take a coffee break, or relax. No, I mean, we'll create that pomp, or whatever it is that we needed, that recognition in between the avodah by just pausing and waiting and stopping. And what are we waiting for? We're in the middle of a very chashuv tavas neiris, right between the 5 and the 2. But according to El Rabbi Yechanan, who argues on Shtakish, who says the Amar babayker, that why does it say babayker by neiris kol kuhu lishnei bekarim? He says split it between two. You have to split you have to split the actual avodah. And the way Rashi says, Alma yesh avodah beinehem, that according to Rabbi Yechanan, there has to be an avodah. It's not good enough to just have a break. You have to have an actual avodah there. Ma'ika lameimar. So then, right? So we would have no eitzah, and therefore, right? So in order to satisfy Rabbi Yechanan, Abai is saying what the order was to satisfy, according to Abba Shaul, to satisfy Rabbi Yechanan. So to satisfy this din that Rabbi Yechanan is saying, so we would actually need an avodah there, and therefore when we have a choice of where to put it, instead of taking the 2, when I say it, where to put the 2 babaykers of the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, instead of putting it one on Mizbeach HaPnimi and one, more importantly, on the Damatamid, I'll put one on the Hatavas Chamesh to give it 3, one on the Damatamid, so that we'll say that the Damatamid is that avodah that splits it. Ravashi. Frakta Gemara, hi babayker the eitzim mi miyater. Is it extra of the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim? You're telling me it's extra? Hi mi bayale legufe. Okay, I need it legufe. I need it to tell me to come rachmana nikadmu l'maracha shniya shel keteres. That now I'm not exactly sure why the Gemara felt it necessary to ask this question. We already answered it, which is what we're going to say. But we asked the question that how could you tell me it's extra the babayker of Shnei Gezirei Eitzim? I need it to tell me to come Rachmana Nikad Maracha Shniya Shakateres, that it has to come that the Maracha Gedola has to come before the Maracha Shniya. So I'm really Kmina Aleh. We already learned it from Aleh and therefore that's how we prove that the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim are extra. Like I said, we already addressed this.
It's unusual, no? Like he forgot Kilo?
I don't know why. I don't know what the Gemara is trying to bavarn here. I mean, I understand that it's putting it here because we just basically said that it's extra. We never addressed the fact that the babayker. We never really introduced the concept of babayker. I guess that's why it's here. We never really introduced the concept of babayker, making it earlier. We just kind of knew it inherently, and over there we never said it by Shnei Gezirei. But here, once we said it, so we're asking a question on it. Okay, when you're going to do, so you have to do all 7. Why do we do 5 Dama Tamid and 2? Why don't we do 2 Dama Tamid and 5? So kivan da aschel bahu avid roiv. You say once you started, you might as well, or you should do roiv. V'navid shis. So once you're doing that, why don't you do 6? So Amar Kra behi tivai esaneres yakti rena behineres pchusos mishtayim. Because we divided the hatavas neres into 2 avodas, and both it says behi tivai esaneres. You have to have multiple. So therefore, one of them you go with roiv, but you have to leave at least 2. So we do 5 and 2. And we say that the shtei neres comes before the keteres. The Amar Kra behi tivai esaneres. V'hadar yakti rena. Okay, that is Abba Shaul Shita, that you finish the Neiros and then you bring the Keteres. V'Keteres le'varim, and the Keteres come before the Varim. Titania, why do the Keteres come before, right? You did your Dama Tamid in between the Neiros, then you do your Keteres, and now you bring your Varim from the Dama Tamid. Why? Titania, Yukdam, Davar, Shenemer B'Baiker, the Davar Shalei Nemer B'Bai, Ella, B'Baiker, Echad, B'Vad. So that's how now we see that something where it says B'Baiker, Dahainu, the Keteres says B'Baiker, right? So far we've been dealing with B'Baiker stuff. except for Dama Tamid, which got an extra Babakir from Shnei Gezereh. So everything, that was a modified Babakir. All these things are Babakir. So therefore, all these things, Disha Mizbeach HaPnimi, all the Marachas, the Gezereh Eitzim, for whatever reason, because it's a Machshir, not because of Babakir, the Hatavas Neiris, the Dama Tamid unmodified, Ketores, they all say Babakir, and therefore all those things come first, and then come Yurei Varim of the Tamid. Okay, and we'll stop here. We're stopping right in the middle, but there's no necessarily better stopping point. Just wanted to point a couple of things I just wanted to speak out quickly. First of all, I really should have said this at the beginning, but I saw something, it was a nice little shot here. It's a question of why, just in the Lashon, it says, Kodemes. Why didn't it say this and then Achar? Should have just said Ba'achar, right? And after this was the Avodah. And the answer is, if you visualize it, the Kaihanim, in a normal day, this is performed by multiple Kaihanim. So that you can imagine the Kaihanim were lined up. And therefore it said Kaidemes, okay, you go first. That the Avodah was attributed to the Kain, and then, okay, you go first. What we're saying is, which Kain doing that Avodah comes first. I just thought it was an interesting...
Almost like, in other words, that they had to wait to start.
They were waiting to start. They were all lined up, ready to go. Okay, you go first, and that's what we use the Lashon of Kaidemes. And just one other thing, one other thing that you have to, it's very interesting that this concept of Eimah V'Yira Ala Mitzvahs, that Abaya said, Gemara Gemina Svara Lo Yadana, that he couldn't come up with the Svara of Eimah V'Yira Ala Mitzvahs. That's a he didn't hold of it. He doesn't hold of Eimah V'Yira Ala Mitzvahs. So how do you answer that? Right? We said that the reason why you did the reason why we did Disha Mizbeach HaPnimi before Hatavas Chamesh Neiros was because Eimah V'Yira Ala Mitzvahs, right? So when you walk in, the Kodesh, you're passing it by. So you have to say that Abaya, they bring down that Abaya definitely held Eimah V'Yira Ala Mitzvahs in general, but okay, but here, since on a normal time the avodah was done by two kaihanim, so it got split into two avodas. So when we're saying ein mavir is when I'm going to do one avodah, that's when, right? When I'm going to do one avodah, that's when I'm going to say, okay, one person doing an avodah, then I'll say ein mavir al mitzvahs. But if it's two different people, then we're not going to say ein mavir al mitzvahs if they're two different people doing the avodas. So in a normal time. Okay. Anyways, so to summarize. Okay, so we started with Abaya according to Abba Shaul. So we said, number one, Maracha Gedela comes first because it says, Hi Ha'ila Al Moikeda. That comes before the Maracha Shniya Shal Keteris, which says, Eishem Mizbeach Tukad Boy. And, right, so that was the Psukim. But why does the Maracha Gedela come first? Because it's, number one, Kaparasa Meruba. Okay, that it has the vast carbonas. And also, right, why does it come before the Keteris? Even though the Keteris goes Lefnim, why does it come before the gachelas, the fire for the Keteris, Maracha Shniya, and that we were able to say either it's Adifa because it has the Kaparas Meruba, or because it also serves as backup for the fire of the Keteris. Then we said that next comes the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim. It says Ubiyar Aleha on, right? So how do we know that the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim come after the Maracha Shniya? Because it says Aleh Chaverta, which means that there are already two fires. It goes on the main fire. You can say it only goes on the main fire, not the other fire, if the other fire is there. So that's how we know that next comes the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim. And the Beis Gezirei Eitzim come before Dishem Mizbeach HaPnimi because it's a Machshir. Okay, and even though it might not be a Machshir for this, it's a Shem Eitzim, or we can say that because once you already started with the different fires, finish, and Shnei Gezirei Eitzim was with the fires before you go on to the next category, which is Dishem Mizbeach HaPnimi, or you could say that it's also a machshir for the Keteris itself, because if, again, like we said in the first, that if you don't have a fire on the secondary one, you would bring it from the primary one. Then we said Dishem Mizbeach HaPnimi comes before the Hatavas Hey Neiros. That's why you do the Mizbeach. Avaya said it Halacha Meshmi Sinai. Rava said Ein Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs. okay, that you pass it on the way in. Then we saw the din of Rava, that we see this concept of even being mitzvahs when it comes to tefillin. We had a different pshatim there. Then we said next comes that tavas hay, right? So next comes that, and in between that is the dama tamid and the tavas beis. Why? Because we take the two babaykers from the shnei gezira eitzim, put one onto tavas hay, one onto dama tamid. Dama tamid beats out the shnei neres because it is a kapara. Okay, and we asked, okay, why don't we go ahead and once we're modifying it, modify the dama tamid, put one onto mizbeach hazav. Okay, so because that was ready first anyways, it doesn't really matter to us. And then put one on Dama Tamid to get it to jump in front. And we said that I understand according to Rish Lakish, then we can just have nothing in between the 5 and the 2. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, that held you have to have an avodah. What avodah are you going to have? LMI, this is the better way to do it. And then we said, and then we said that, by the way, why are we mativ 5, right? Why is it 5? Because we want Rav. So why not 6 and 1? Because this is Neiros, so you have to have a minimum of 2 on the back end of Avodah. And then we said Hatavas Beis Neiros come before the Keteris because it said again they also have a Baker Behetiva as HaNeiros Yakti Rena. So we see Neiros come first, finish Neiros, and then Yakti Rena the Keteris, and Keteris come before the Avarim because all these things say Babaker, and Avarim falls under the Esakevas Echad Tasa Babaker, which is only one Baker.